Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/kyhistorypod. Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and we have another great Kentucky history episode. Joining me today is author Kay Hamilton, who is here to discuss her book, Burned as a Witch, The Legend of Leah Smock, a part of the lost history in Meade County. Ms. Hamilton, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this is a pretty interesting topic that you introduced me to a little while ago at the Fraser Museum at the 120 Counties celebration thing, and sounded like a pretty captivating story. We're going to get into it in a lot of detail. Before that, though, tell us a little bit about yourself and your Kentucky connection.
I have lived in Kentucky my entire life. Actually, Meade County, Battletown, Kentucky is where I'm from. I've lived here my entire life. My husband and I bought the farm next to the farm where I was raised. So I'm a Battletown girl. Mm-hmm. I grew up with the stories of Leah Smock through my uncle, Shirley Bennett. They called him Cowboy. My dad, Russell Vandiver, and my father-in-law, Alan Hamilton. And I've heard the stories of Leah Smock since childhood, as far as I can remember. And I just decided that I would share those with the rest of the world.
Well, that's good. I'm born and raised in Kentucky as well, and plenty of our listeners are. And there's also those who have left the state and have come back, which tends to be a common theme in those who leave Kentucky. But we're talking about Meade County, or this event happened in Meade County, correct?
Yes. Leah Smock's parents were from, her dad was John Smock, her mother Margaret Smock. They were from Pennsylvania and New Jersey. They moved from state to state, actually from county to county until settling in Meade. Mm-hmm. And it was before Battletown was actually Battletown. It was in the area known as Laplands. And they settled here. Her dad, John, bought 300 acres in the vicinity, actually probably about a half a mile from where I live. And they stayed there on the Smock farm until after Leah was burned as a witch, deemed a witch, and then they moved into another area, into Wolf Creek. And but they lived here in Battletown area. The stories came from my uncle, Cowboy. Mm-hmm. His great-grandfather was only a year and a month older than Leah Smock. They grew up together. So the stories were passed down through the generations, and that's what I've heard.
Yeah. So to preference here with the audience here, what time frame are we talking about? Because this is way past the Salem witches and all that kind of stuff. This is the last witch burning in America or Kentucky for sure, right?
It's the only Leah is the only person to be accused as a witch and burned to death. The other witches were hanged, stoned. She was the only witch in the recorded history that was ever burned to death.
Mm-hmm.
And Leah was burned to death August 21st, 1840.
1840. Wow. A lot of people probably don't realize that. That is a that's a little later than probably people realize or put that in. You know, you think of the Salem witches. That was in like that was the 1600s or something, right? Um,
Yes.
yeah. So this
Yes.
is 100 plus years later.
Yes.
So let's get into the details of it. How did this come about?
She was, as my uncle told, the stories, like I said, were passed down through his great grandfather
Mm-hmm.
to him, then to my generation, to his children and myself. He was my uncle by marriage. He married my mom's sister, and he kept the stories alive through the generations. Some of the stories I heard from my dad, some from my father-in-law,
Mm-hmm.
but the the large account of stories came from my uncle Cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
He, there are so many stories that he told that were passed down. One story, the most well-known story, was of Leah and a baby.
Mm-hmm.
A mother was holding her 3-month-old baby, and Leah wanted to hold or touch the baby, and the mother said, "No, you cannot touch my baby. You cannot hold my baby." And Leah became angry, and she told the mother, "Your baby will be dead by morning." And
Wow.
the mother became even more angry and shunned her away. And the next morning, the baby was dead.
Oh.
They blamed Leah for witching the baby out of anger. But my uncle always said that she kind of had premonitions and healing powers. And he thought maybe that she sensed the baby was ill
Mm-hmm.
and maybe was trying to save the baby.
Mm-hmm.
But whichever the story, it happened that the baby died. Then when they had the baby laid in the coffin, Leah walked up and was still wanting to touch the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother dragged her off and said no. And the story goes that Leah stood outside the house, and all the cats in the neighborhoods went wild, climbed on the rooftops. The dogs began to howl. It was just chaos all night long with the animals.
Mm-hmm.
And Leah stood to the side with a strange look about her, a strange smile, a strange look. And when she was taken home, the cats and the dogs settled down, and the night became quiet.
Wow.
Just a weird story, wild story.
Yeah. um, so is that like as far as like I know you mentioned your relatives and the passing down of the stories. Upon doing the research and stuff for any of this, I mean, is that basically the what you took most of the information? Was any of this like mentioned in like newspapers, that kind of stuff, or?
The our local county newspapers and the Louisville Courier Journal has done numerous reports, interviews with my uncle, even my dad, my father-in-law. they've gone to the news media has gone to the cemetery where Leah's buried, and there's even a Wave 3 TV did a news video report one Halloween in October for Halloween. And their cameras wouldn't work, or their camera worked, but the lights went out. And we had to take our flashlights and illuminate the headstone with our lights, so there would be enough light to video.
Wow.
And when they got back to their vehicle, they checked the cameras, the lights. It had a full charge. The camera lady said she knew she had charged the batteries before she left, that they went dead at the grave, and back at the vehicle, they worked again.
Wow.
Strange.
Definitely. Real quickly, I'm going to throw up the cover of the book. Where can people get the book at?
They can contact me personally if they would like. I have a Facebook page, Kay Hamilton Author. I'll be glad to sign, autograph, and mail anybody a copy that would like a copy. They can message me on Messenger, and I'll be glad to pass those books out.
All right. So already you'll get some wild stories here. What's some more?
Another story is about a team of horses. This is another well-known story. A man had bought a team of horses, and was coming home with those horses, and it was told that Leah loved animals, and she kind of had a way with animals. She ran up to the horses and wanted to pet the horses, and the man said no and shoved her away. But Leah kind of inched back up and managed to rub the nose of one of the horses, and the man who owned the horses shoved her away again. The next morning, that horse died. And the next day, the second horse died. And they blamed Leah, that she had caused the horses to die out of anger because the man would not allow her to touch the animals. Now, there again, maybe she sensed something wrong with those animals and just wanted to get a feel. Maybe she did cause their deaths. But the story that's passed down through the generations was that Leah caused the animals to die out of anger because the man would not let her touch his animals.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow. Now, as time went, I don't know the chronological order of these events, but some more events, more things similar keep happening.
Yes. Those are stories of Leah's life, and she was accused to be a witch, and they locked her in a smokehouse, burned her to death, and they said it was horrific. The screams were horrific. She was buried on the backside of the Smock property in an unmarked grave. I believe my uncle always said the reason they buried her in an unmarked grave was to protect her from other people who believed she was a witch. But there were a couple hunters who were in the vicinity, and they saw Leah's ghost. after she was buried. And they became so fearful, they went back to town. They got 2 wagon loads of rocks, large stones, came back, dug down into the grave about 3 feet, they say, filled that full of rocks and piled rocks 3 feet high on top of the grave in hopes to keep Leah contained in her grave. But little did they know she had already escaped. She still roams the hills and hollers of Battletown today.
Wow. Well, I don't know about stacking stones on top of a grave would prevent a ghost from leaving or not. I don't think that's how it would work.
Superstitions on their
Yeah.
part, I believe.
Yeah. How old was she when she was burned?
She was 22 years and 7 months. A friend of hers decided or felt the need to put a stone up for her. He got a large limestone slab and chiseled in the limestone rock. Leah Smock departed this life August 21st, 1840, aged 22 years and 7 months. And but the odd thing about is her headstone faces backwards. All headstones, the writing faces the grave.
Yeah.
And hers faces backwards. The writing's backwards. Now, we just guess maybe the reason is because either the rocks were too tall on her grave to read what he had chiseled in her stone, that he turned it around backwards, or it was turned backwards to signify a difference in the other graves. I don't know. That's just something that some of us kind of try to figure out.
Yeah. So did it go, or I mean, how many total events do you think it was like that led over time? How long? I mean, did it start when she was younger, or all at once? What? How'd that go?
It's told that her mother was a powerful witch too. Leah's childhood, they said she was a very strange child. She kept to herself a lot. She was seen a lot of times in the woods with the animals. They said she could tame the wildest of animals. She was seen with the coyotes and the fox, and as if they were playmates, that they seemed tame around her. They said she could predict things that would happen, and those predictions would come true. Her mom took her out of school when she was young because of talk around the community. The parents talk, the kids hear, and the kids start teasing her, calling her a witch, and it became impossible, and her mom pulled her out of school when she was young.
Which during this time, I mean, in Meade County is very close to Jefferson County, and I think you said 1840s, right? Or
yes,
yeah. So obviously, public education isn't what it is now, but kids went to school. It wasn't an uncommon thing. Most kids were going to school during this time, and it's interesting to see that I guess it was seen kind of early that people were taking notice.
Yes, she was. They said she was just a kid, maybe 12. when her mom pulled her out of school, is what they told. And she just kind of was a loner. They told she had friends, but then her friends taunted and teased her a lot. It's told one of the stories that one of the boys was teasing her so badly that she chased him through the woods and caused him to go out of his mind.
Oh.
That she sicked her wild animals on him.
Oh.
And said he just went out of his mind.
Wow. Jeez.
Strange.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it all just, was this like a plan? Was it, how did the, burning go about? Was it you know, a mobbish kind of thing, or did it, how did that get going? I guess what led to that?
The I think it. Well, my uncle always said that she would cause the neighbors accused her of witching their crops. That some of the neighbors' crops would dry up while her dad's crops were healthy and
Plentiful.
plentiful. Yes, and that some of the ponds would dry up for the cattle, and that she just I think what finally caused the demise of Leah Smock was her dad was a cooper, and a lot of the other people in the area were coopers. They made barrels. There's a lot of lime rock in the area, and they would burn the lime rock to make lime dust, lime, and would ship that lime by barrels down the river on a flatboat. So the neighbors' barrels started falling apart, but her dad's did not. And that was their livelihood. I mean, they farmed, and but barrel making was their main livelihood. And they accused Leah of witching their barrels to fall apart. And they just decided that the only alternative they had was to get rid of Leah, to stop her. And they locked her in a smokehouse. They set fire to it and burned her to death.
Wow. So did anybody get charged for any of that, or any?
I know I've been asked that question so many times, and I have no answer. My uncle always said that they didn't because they were afraid of Leah. They were still afraid of her even after her death. And everyone stopped talking about her. They stopped talking about what happened. My uncle said he asked his grandmother one time, and his grandmother said, "Hush, we don't talk about her." And even some of the people who are descendants of Leah's sister, they won't. People wouldn't talk about her. They wouldn't talk about the her being a witch. They wouldn't talk about her death. They wouldn't talk about who did it or why, other than those stories that were passed. And my uncle, of course, the curious boy he wanted to hear it. And his great grandfather told us it was just passed down through the generations, the stories. And I was the last, I'm the last generation to know. When my uncle got too old to tour people to the cemetery.
Mhm.
His second son took over. And
Mhm.
my uncle took us to the cemetery every October for Halloween and told
Yeah.
us the ghost stories of Leah Smock, the witch. I never knew her name until I was much, much, much older. She was just the witch.
Mhm. Wow. Well, I guess it just baffles me. I mean, it seems like they just locked her in there and burnt the cat or burnt the shed down. And I don't know. That's mind blowing. That
I know it is. It's scary, and it's scary to think about it, and it's scary that nothing was done. That
yeah.
they hid that from the world,
Hmm.
and people just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
They didn't talk about it. They, I guess, wanted to forget it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think. What you're saying is they just wanted to hide it. They did not want people to know about it, and that's the scary part.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, that's the scary part.
Mhm.
That it happened, and no one talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, how long did it take you to put the book together? I mean, how long did it take you to write it and so forth?
Um, it was actually, I don't know. I wrote on it um, over a
Okay.
couple years before I finally got it to the point where I felt like it was ready. And then after I published it, there was 100 things I wished I'd put in, found out later.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
I had a, a lot of the stories I just knew from um, verbally from
Mhm.
my uncle, my dad, my father-in-law. I had a whole notebook of newspaper articles from that the newspapers had published, um, where they had interviewed my uncle and my cousin, and it. I just knew the stories. I just grew up with those stories. I
Well,
grew up as far back as I can remember. I've heard those stories.
well, it's part of the history there. It's part of your
It
history as well, you
is.
know?
It is.
Um,
My father-in-law, I have to quote him. I quote him in the beginning of my book and at the end. My father-in-law um, said, it's not a story, it's history."
mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, um, so out of all the things, I mean, I know you've already shared a few things. Any others that stand out that is really like one that stands out to you besides the horses one, the baby one? Anything else as far as those stories go, or even afterwards, the haunting and the ghost, anything like that?
She had a friend. Um, the only person through the generations that um, that was talked about was um, they called him Indian Joe.
Mhm.
And I know that's not politically correct in
Mhm.
this day and time, but that's what
That's what they say.
he was passed down called Indian Joe.
Mhm.
Um, he They were good friends, and she another story is that she wanted him to build a house beside her, beside them,
Mhm.
and another man was building a house in the same area, and that she witched the man to fall off the roof and break his leg, and he could not complete his house, and Indian Joe ended up building a house in that area.
Mm.
That's another weird story. But a lot of the stories um, are told after her death. Um, there are so many stories of people in the area who she causes them to wander around and get lost in for days. Um, she they just lose their sense of where they are.
Mm-hmm.
My son actually, um, he he was probably about 10 or 12 years old. He and his little friend rode dirt bikes in the area,
Mm-hmm.
and they were at my dad's talking about Leah Smock, and his friend had not been to the cemetery, so they decided to ride their dirt bikes over there. Well, my son, he knew a lot of the stories about Leah Smock and what would happen. Um, they got over to the cemetery, got off their bikes, and looked at the grave. And when they got ready to leave, their bikes wouldn't start. And my son knew why.
Mm-hmm.
They had parked too close to her grave.
Uh-huh.
So they pushed the bikes down the hill, around the ridge, and my son finally said, "I think we're far enough away." And they cranked their bikes and they started right up and they drove home. But they wouldn't start up on the hill
Yeah. Wow.
where Lee was. Mm-mm. My brother-in-law, when he was young, he and a bunch of friends decided they were going over to the cemetery. And he told his friend who was driving, "Don't go close to the cemetery. Don't get close." Well, he did. And all 4 tires went flat on their truck.
Oh, whoa.
So they hiked out and hiked down to the neighbor who had a garage and borrowed 4 tires, went back, changed tires, drove out. When they got to the garage, the 4 tires aired up. There was nothing wrong with the tires.
Wow.
They just suddenly went flat for no reason.
Hmm.
Weird
Wow.
things.
Yeah.
People had seen her apparition. Oh, so many accounts of Leah's apparition. I've never seen her. And I sometimes think I wished I could. And then other times I think, oh, no, I don't want to see her.
Yeah.
But we were at the cemetery one night, and this was our annual Halloween trip.
Mm-hmm.
And my cousin saw her, and he said, "Look, there she is." And of course, we were all looking around, and he said, "Up in the trees." He saw her up in the trees hovering, and we all looked, but she had gone by then.
Mm-hmm.
But hunters have seen her apparition,
Yeah.
just floating around.
Wow.
And I had so much when I was trying to get my book published.
Mm-hmm.
My publisher called and said, "Tell Leah to knock it off." That said, I can't get it put. I lost stories. I lost files. My computer would just shut down for no reason when it would have a full charge. I had so many difficulties. My publisher had my book backed up in 3 different places. They all disappeared. All 3 disappeared.
Oh, wow. Whoa.
And they lost chapters.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how, but Leah's around. She's around. And I gave a talk about Leah at the very first witch festival in Brandenburg.
Mm-hmm.
My microphone went off. I was the only, there were several speakers that day,
Yeah,
several.
yeah.
My microphone went off when I started to talk about Leah Smock.
Mm.
When I finished, it came back on.
Wow.
That's weird. That's
It
weird.
is. It
I
is.
was over at the cemetery one day to get some pictures, and I set my camera down too close to her grave. I had it in a backpack, and I set my backpack down too close, and my camera, the battery on my camera was dead. And when I got home, I was going to recharge my battery. It was 100% charged.
Wow.
Weird.
Weird stuff. Yeah, yeah, wow.
Weird.
Uh, this has gotten a little spookier than I expected, I guess. Uh,
Oh, her mom, Leah
mhm,
Smock's mom, saw her apparition um, after um, after Leah was burned,
mhm,
and when the fire finally um, died down. The next day, Leah's mom was at the cemetery or at the um smokehouse,
mhm,
and it was told that Leah's mom saw Leah's apparition and said, "Leah, why did you not save yourself?"
mhm.
And um, so that was the first sighting of Leah's apparition. The second sighting was the one I told about the hunters before
Mhm.
they um, filled in her grave. And her apparition's been seen since 1840,
Yeah.
and still to this. The last time her apparition was seen and recorded um, was, oh, I forgot the date. The school in Battletown School. Her apparition was seen in the school twice by the custodian, one time by a student.
Mhm.
I documented those. Um, the school was closed in 2012, and um, a hunting outfitter company bought it, and uh, several of the hunters and videographers that came to the lodge uh, saw Leah's apparition. I've documented those as well. So that's been since probably maybe 2000, somewhere between 2015, 16, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, I should have looked the date up before tonight, but
Yeah.
I didn't
Well.
think to. But it's she's still being seen. She's still there.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, again, I'll show off the book here. If people want to get a hold of it, we'll put some links in the uh, comments for those who are interested and dive deeper into the Legend of Leah Smock and get many more tales. Correct?
I've heard since I have written my book,
Hmm.
I've had numerous people that have contacted me with stories of their own
Hmm.
um, experiences they've had, apparitions they've seen. And the odd thing, or well, it's not odd, it's just a fact. The Leah's apparition, every person that has described her, and this was before my book was written, so they didn't read it, they just saw it. But every description of Leah Smock, she has long dark hair, petite, and a long white dress. Everyone has been described identically to this
Wow.
to the same long dark hair, long white dress,
Yeah.
and that's how. And they didn't. I don't think they knew. A friend of mine who lives just down the road, when he was young, uh, he said he woke up in the night. He heard a voice, and he knew it wasn't his mother. He thought maybe it was an aunt, his aunt, but she wasn't visiting. But for some reason, he woke up and he was drawn outside. And he got up, went outside, and he saw Leah Smock's ghost.
Hmm.
And he said he became so frightened. He ran back in the house, jumped in bed, covered up over his head, and hope to never see her again. But people just, there's just countless sightings of Leah Smock. Hunters, one hunter, some friends were hunting one night, and he saw Leah's apparition just floating. He said, just floating across the ground, and scared him to death. He said he didn't want to go back hunting.
Well, you bring up the point that many authors do have. They write a book, and then they find 100 more things they could have put in it to make it even more detailed. Again, before we wrap it up, how can people get a hold of you or get a copy of the book?
I have a Facebook page, Kay Hamilton Author, and they can also send me a message on Messenger, and email. They can email me. I was going to say, I guess, do I give my email address out? I guess
we can put it in the comments and stuff if that'd be easier.
All righty. And but I do have a Facebook
author page. Yeah.
Facebook author page, Kay Hamilton Author, or Messenger. It's probably the easiest way.
Okay. All right. Well, this is a bit more of a chilling episode that we've had here on the podcast, but thank you a bunch for coming on and talking about this book the book you've put out, and we appreciate documenting this history that is part of the state.
I've just felt like that I need to. This was going to be lost if I didn't document it. The next generation, my kids, they know some of the stories. They don't know all the stories. So it's just a piece of history, Battletown history, Meade County history, that people are not aware of. It was news back in the 70s, 80s, with the newspaper articles and the TV coverage, but it died down. And for years after that, it was just quiet. The landowners stopped the tours because of vandalism, which is sad. But now she's back, and I'm surprised that our connection didn't get canceled for some reason. I know she's hovering over me right now.
And that's good. It's good that we can look at this in many ways, but to me, it sounds a bit of a tragedy that the way her life had to end. But again, we thank you much for coming on. If another book comes out, you have another book. Tell us quickly about the other book.
My first book was about a ghost in our school, and I believed the ghost was Leah Smock because right at the end we put two and two together after the apparitions were seen, and believed it was Leah Smock, and that prompted my book, Burned as a Witch, The Legend of Leah Smock, to keep the story alive.
Well, thank you for doing that, and thank you for joining us, Miss Hamilton. Anything else before we go?
Oh, I could talk all day, and I know I have left out some very important parts that I should have told, but I guess this is it.
Well, we can always do it again if we need to. Yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thank you. And again, it's not a story; it's history.
There you go.
It's
Thank
Battletown history.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/kyhistorypod. You've probably heard about Daniel Boone, but what about the rest of the frontiersmen who came to Kentucky and settled? That's what we want to bring to the Kentucky History Channel. The stories of the untold, the stories of those forgotten. One thing to expect on our channel is great Kentucky content. Some stories that you've never heard of. The Night Riders, who began in western Kentucky. Bloody Monday, the riots in Louisville. The assassination of Governor Goebel, the only governor ever assassinated in the United States. Stories from all over Kentucky, stories that are unforgettable once you've heard them. You can find out who counties in Kentucky are named after and how your county got started. From beginning to end, we plan to document every county in Kentucky, all 120. Reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and also leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos. You can also check out our podcast episodes. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. We're always seeking to find more Kentucky history so we can bring it to you. The viewers, the listeners, we want all the stories and all the events from Kentucky's great history to be told and shared everywhere.